Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I'm Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. Jack, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, and I think everyone who's tuning in tonight is here to talk about the downfall of Jeff Goodman.
So I missed all of this.
How did you miss all of this?
I hadn't paid any attention. I saw that he blocked in Major Madness.
He blocked our boy Nick over at Major Madness. Too long didn't read. There's this fan account who's a DePaul account, but also runs like a Big East fan account who creates these documentaries about Big East teams where he reaches out to like legit people like John Fanta and other people who like call the games and are just around the Big East stuff. And it was a documentary about Ed Cooley leaving Providence.
Okay.
And apparently, I think there was a quote in there from one of the people, because it's a documentary. There was no opinion placed in. It was telling the story through the lens of the subjects. And apparently one of them, I think, said Ed Cooley cheated on his wife, which apparently is a thing known around Providence. I don't know. But
why
then
did that make Jeff Goodman mad?
Jeff Goodman then slid into this guy's DM and said, you're going to look good. Do you look good in orange? Because you're going to jail. And essentially just like insinuated, like, I'm going to ruin you. We're going to sue the heck out of you. And like everything like that. And it was just really like,
I gotta find.
Excuse the language is about to come on. It was real like just dickwad behavior. And now everyone
all the time.
It was electric, but no, I'm doing great. I'm ready to dive into all things football, men's basketball, women's basketball, lacrosse, baseball, and softball. We have a loaded podcast on our hands, and I think we got to start with we got to start with our ads. What am I doing? I'm acting like this is my first ever podcast. Head on over to the Three Notched Valley Collab House or any of their locations in Roanoke, in Charlottesville, in Richmond, in Virginia Beach, or of course, Harrisonburg, Virginia, our friends at Three Notch. We might be a little biased, but we think they make some of the best beer in Virginia. And they got some great specials going on, Bennett.
They absolutely do, as I scroll Twitter reading about Jeff Goodman. Yeah, but we love Three Notch in Harrisonburg. Minuteman Mondays. Today is, in fact, a Monday, so you can still take part in this. $3 Minuteman pours. Go in there with your headphones on, listen to the live podcast, sit in a corner, drink your $3 Minuteman. Tuesdays, they got half off cases, pretty darn good deal. And Friday, of course, is First Tap Friday, where Three Notch releases a new beer every Friday. You have a chance to give that a try if you're in town on Fridays.
Indeed, and something you can check out too. They're not releasing a new diamond every Friday, but man, are they luxurious and laid back.
There's a reason Christopher William Jewelers has been voted best of Virginia year after year. It's not just one thing that sets us apart. It's everything. It's the selection, extensive and unmatched, with every engagement ring, loose diamond, and fashion jewelry chosen for quality and brilliance. It's the service. From our diamond experts to our master goldsmith, our team shares a passion for what they do, and it shows. It's the atmosphere, both glamorous and laid back. See for yourself why people can't stop talking about Christopher William Jewelers in Harrisonburg and Weir's Cave.
That's right. And also it's playoff time, and the road to Vegas goes through San Francisco and Baltimore, or it went through San Francisco and Baltimore. And I'll get through this ad read as quickly as possible because I know Bennett is still going through some pain from last night. SOL, folks. BetOnline is your number one source for all your playoff football odds, stats, trends, and lines for the big game. Everything from point spreads to hundreds of player props. You do not want to miss out with everything that BetOnline has going on. I was on Sam Laporta anytime touchdown. That didn't hit. I was on Brock Purdy over 1.5 passing touchdowns. That didn't hit. So you might not want to listen to me for betting advice, although I was pretty good on the Baltimore Kansas City one. Head to BetOnline today to stay updated on all the action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
That's exactly right.
All right. So last podcast, I don't know if you remember, Bennett, I was rudely interrupted by a fire alarm.
That's true.
Which came right after you said, I have a very hot take. let's start this podcast where the last one was rudely ended with the hot take, with some football talk, and that will lead us into everything else. Refresh my mind. What was that fire hot take?
My hot take was that I think the group of 5 team that makes the college football playoff in 2024, that expanded 12-team field, will be the 12 seed. And I don't think they stand much of a chance or any chance of winning a road game against what is presumably a Power 5 opponent in that first round.
I don't mean to be rude when I say this, but could you imagine JMU this year going up against Michigan?
See, they wouldn't have had Michigan at least, though, because what they're the 1.
Okay,
But I
yeah.
get what, yeah, I know what you're saying. It would have been
All
what they
right,
played.
screw me.
Well, it would have arguably been worse, right? Wasn't Georgia the 5?
Yes. So
I think that's almost scarier. Like if Georgia's in the playoff, I think they give Michigan a pretty good fight.
yeah. But so, yeah, what you're saying is you're building this roster, you're building this transfer portal class, everything like that to win the Sun Belt and to maybe get that G5 spot. But your end goal is to win the Sun Belt. Your end goal is not to make it to the college football playoff and end up, getting a date with Oregon in Eugene to try and take them down. And yeah, I agree with you because we've seen that outside of Cincinnati's amazing season, which they needed 2 amazing seasons to even get the chance to go to the college football playoff. The group of 5 has kind of been routinely snubbed each and every year by the college football playoff committee, whether that's because they don't think the Sun Belt or, Conference USA or the American or whatever it may be, that power outside of the Power 5, those conferences give you a good battle on a week-to-week basis, whether it's that, whether it's just an overall bias, whatever it may be. The committee has routinely kind of disrespected the group of 5. So I think it's almost foolish to think that a group of 5 would be a top 6 seed next year. And even the year after that, you'd really need 2 back-to-back great years like we saw from Cincinnati, even what we saw out of UCF, and they still snubbed UCF. The only reason that I think Cincinnati got in a few years ago into the college football playoff was because it was a down year, perfect storm, everything around it. And they saw what kind of the uproar was from UCF a few years back. But I don't think that's hot of a take. I think that's a kind of agreed upon a take. Maybe I'm in my own echo chamber, but
I feel like there's some JMU fans that think if JMU gets in, they would have a legit chance of winning a game or contending. I don't think it's the majority of fans. I think there's no chance, like regardless of who the group of 5 champion is, I think they're going to lose by, they'd probably be a 2-touchdown underdog, which I think some group of 5 people would disagree with.
It's just hard to, even no matter how good you are, to go on the road and win at a Power 5 school.
A Power 5 school that's hosting a playoff game, like the
For
fans,
the first, especially for this next year, for the first time ever.
Yeah. So I guess the point I was making is when we look at the portal and you look at like what JMU's building, I feel like sometimes group of 5 fans and JMU fans are getting confused where they're like, and confused isn't even the right word. I think I just disagree with some of it where it's like, we're building a roster to like make the playoff and like, maybe be scrappy in there. I think they're building a roster to maybe possibly have a chance of making the playoff. I think they're just building a roster that like has a shot in the Sun Belt.
Yeah, I think the end all be all is to continue to add in the portal and to grow that way so that at the end of the day, you're in a position to win the Sun Belt. Maybe not even in a position to be the G5 rep, because I mean, we saw Signetti's contract. We've seen Chesney's contract now. There's a lot of incentive in winning, I think, double-digit games, and there's a lot of incentive in winning the Sun Belt championship game.
If you do that, in theory, you're possibly in the mix, depending on what you do in non-conference to get the spot. I hope at least JMU fans don't put too much stock in making the playoff and instead are more focused on contending to win the Sun Belt. Because you could have a 2-loss Sun Belt champ like you have with Troy, and I know there's like maybe you throw up an asterisk because JMU wasn't in the game, but 2-loss Sun Belt champion Troy was not in the mix to make the New Year's Six Bowl, really, right? It was kind of SMU and Liberty were the 2 you were having discussed. So like if you win the Sun Belt, that's pretty cool, even if you're not the group of 5 playoff rep.
Yeah. For me, my hope, I think we've talked a little bit about it and we'll continue to talk about it as we lead into, the offseason and everything. But I want JMU to compete for 9 wins ish and be in the running to be the Sun Belt East representative. I think, to me, just getting a spot in the Sun Belt championship game and playing a competitive game in the championship game is what I want from the Dukes each and every season. I'm not looking for, can they be the G, because there's so much to it too when it comes to being that G5 rep that is just out of the team's control. They could go 11-1, 10-1. I forget how many
They
games
got
are on the
12, and then the Sun Belt titles are 13, I guess.
So they could go, in theory, 13-1, and then you have a 14-0 Liberty team again who gets the G5 bid.
Yeah,
And I just don't want to argue with Liberty fans and like JMU fans bickering amongst themselves about how we deserved it, how we JMU deserved that bid, not Liberty. And it's like, yeah, but we won the Sun Belt title. We lost to UNC. That's a good season. Yes.
Yeah, I would agree. That's sort of, I guess, the main reason I have the take is I don't think JMU fans should get blinded by the fact that like not making the playoff in 24 is not a huge deal.
Yeah, you're almost tempering your expectations now rather than like trying to rationalize it come December 25th.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we should all do. JMU continues to add in the portal, though. They've added Quincy Jenkins, an offensive lineman, guard, center, interior type player from Campbell. 3-year starter for the Camels, I believe, right? 3 years?
Yep.
3-year starter for the Camels. You actually just talked with him.
I did.
We'll have that video up over on our YouTube, JMU Sports News, either later tonight or tomorrow. What are you expecting out of Quincy?
I mean, the Heisman? Too much to add? No, I mean, I think he's going to come in. It sounded like he really wants to be coached by Robo and connected with him, the offensive line coach at JMU. So I think there's excitement there for him. My guess would be he comes in and competes for time at a guard spot. Whether he's a starter or not, I don't know. He's going to arrive in the summer. He's going to graduate in May from Campbell. So he's still there now. Will join JMU over the summer. My guess is he competes for time at guard, whether he's a starter or a really quality depth piece. Not sure, but sounds like he's excited to get to work. 6'4", 315. Good player. Good player.
That's a nice guard size.
Yeah, he's got some nice highlights. There's a couple where he, dispatches a defensive lineman and then gets to the next level pretty quick and locks into a linebacker. So,
what a word! Dispatches a lineman. Oh, baby! Oh, Bennett coming out here dispatching people. Whoa. Don't get in his way. As they continue to add in the portal, a couple others have trickled in. I completely blanked on their name. I know
Terrence Spence was a big one.
Yes, and that leads me to the next question. So I'm going to write down Spence, and then we'll come back to that as you fill in on who came.
Okay. Oh, you want me to fill in? Sorry, I was reading something.
Yeah, give me who's coming.
Great podcasting by me. No, Terrence Spence is a big one at defensive back because he's kind of the only portal addition, unless you count Chauncey Logan withdrawing from the portal as an addition, which you could do if you are a lunatic. They've also added. Did we talk about Cam Ross last time? It all blends together.
I wrote about him in my wide receiver article.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm confusing. So they added Cam Ross. I thought we might have, but anyway, Cam Ross, wide receiver of UConn, possible starter. Well, I would say likely starter, to be honest. Really productive at UConn when he was healthy. So they helped the wide receiver room. They also added Logan Kyle, who was a tight end wide receiver from Vanderbilt. Didn't do a ton for them, but caught 11 balls for 103 yards last year. They list him, JMU did in his graphic, as a tight end. So maybe they'll use him there as kind of a receiving tight end alongside Taylor Thompson. Maybe a little competition there. And then also with Kai Wright. And then the other addition, they had a kicker from UConn who has 2 years left and is probably the starting kicker.
Yeah, 31 of 31 on extra points in their career.
Yeah.
So that's pretty big.
Was it Noah Rulas or no Rulas?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I want to take it back to Terrence Spence. He comes in listed as a cornerback. There's a potential that he slides over to safety to get some play time, maybe plays more in the slot. It'll be interesting to see how he's used. But that brings me to a debate we had where the defensive backs, I'm a little worried. And I know Daniel Merriman asked this question over on Twitter. And if you're listening now to the live podcast, You can drop any questions in this kind of live stream under X, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're listening. But Daniel Merriman asked this question about kind of what was our position groups of concern. To me, it's defensive back.
I think that's fair. That'd probably be mine too. You've got Chauncey Logan and D'Angelo Pons returning. Jacob Thomas was a starting safety last year who also returns. And then Terrence Spence figures to be in there somewhere at defensive back. Ton of incoming freshmen and some other, I guess, underclassmen who maybe could step in and play defensive back. But yeah, there are some questions, especially outside sort of that initial group of starters and maybe even a little bit within that initial group of starters. So that's an area that I probably have the most questions too. I guess they could still add some transfers either now or in the spring.
I'm going to call you out. Over a text, you said, in theory, the secondary should be a lot better, right?
I do stand by that, but I would
think
say
they're better?
Well, in theory, right? You get Pons back.
Yes.
You start the year with Pons. They kind of didn't get to Pons until like week 4. So you start the year with D'Angelo Pons. Chauncey Logan also returns. So both your starting corners, they get another year to develop. Your head coach, I believe, Bob Chesney, has a pretty extensive background coaching not only special teams in various positions, but defensive backs. Seems to be his thing. Lyle Hemphill, your defensive coordinator, that is his thing.
Yeah.
Is coaching defensive backs. So that's a positive in terms of one, like identifying who can play defensive back and developing them. Those both seem important, but then also maybe devising a plan that puts them in a position where they can play to their strengths. Jacob Thomas, you would hope could take a leap if he's one of your starting safeties. And then Terrence Spence has played a lot of football really well for Holy Cross. So you've got 4 guys there that you probably feel pretty good about. Some underclassmen coming in who could be really good, replacing some of these veterans, but some of the veterans were kind of like, not to be mean, but like FCS kind of guys where maybe they recruited them when they're at the FCS level or they're like rotational pieces. In theory, the new recruits are supposed to be like some of the more talented players you've ever had, right? Because like it's your 3rd year at the FBS. You've been winning at the FBS level. So, I mean, like on paper, I could see how they get better. But yeah, it's a little bit concerning we don't have a lot of like veterans coming back.
Yeah, I do love you're really leaning on the in theory. Because in theory, you're not wrong. My worry is maybe Pons doesn't take that next step that we all expect him to take. You hope Chauncey Logan takes that extra step forward. I don't know if it was coaching this last year, but it seemed like he didn't take the Heisman step that we had necessarily expected.
A lot of people were saying he would.
Yeah. Like some people on this podcast. I see what you're saying. I guess I also have the issue too with the defensive line. You lose Jalen Green. You lose absolute just insane production, 21 and a half TFLs, 15 and a half sacks in 9 games, on pace to have over 20 if he played the entire year without tearing his ACL. He's doing great in his rehab, getting ready for the NFL draft process, but a real bummer he missed those last few games. And now you replace it with kind of what was already on your roster. You bring in Terry Lockett from Syracuse. But do you expect it to be a problem that this defensive line isn't going to be able to generate? You lost Mikel Kamara, you lost James Carpenter, you still have Emmanuel Bush, and then you have some kind of question mark young guys, unknowns that got some PT at the end of the year, but not a lot of PT returning. Do you expect the defensive line, or I guess it's a kind of a convoluted question because it's kind of twofold. Are they going to get the pressure quick, and then is the secondary going to be able to hold up if they're not getting pressure in 3 seconds because they couldn't do that last year?
I'm not overly concerned right now.
Okay.
They might take a step back from last year. That's very true.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So is the defensive side, specifically the secondary, your wide receiver? Because I'm not concerned with the wide receivers at all.
I guess so. I think the thing that gives me hope, and it's a different coaching staff, but like this time last year, you could say August last year, like I didn't know much of anything about D'Angelo Pons, and they became a freshman All-American.
Yeah.
Jalen Green, we assumed would take a leap. Nobody thought he was going to have 15 and a half sacks in 9 games. Like people were like, yeah, Uku's gone. He's got a chance to take a nice step. I talked to Jalen Green and asked him about like his number coming into the season. He was like, I thought 10 sacks would be good. So like he was 5.5 over in 3 fewer games than he expected to play. Like, so that's, I think, the area I have some excitement is like there are probably names on the roster that we have seen but don't like necessarily register
Yeah.
that I think could be really good. And then I'll give the defensive line a little more credit for their portal class. They added Terry Lockett from Syracuse. They also got my guy Eric O'Neill,
Oh, I forgot about from Long Island, right?
Long Island stud. And then they also added Lloyd Summerall the third, who's from USF last year, but also played at Florida prior to that, who's kind of like that edge rusher, 6'5", 240. I think he had 4 tackles for loss in 8 games for South Florida last year. So they've got a couple replacements there, and then I think some younger guys who could step up. But yeah, like losing your entire defensive line, Jalen Green, who is an NFL prospect, Jeremy Chroma, who I did not realize until today had gotten invited to the East-West Shrine Bowl. I was doing some mock drafts today, and I got into round 6 or 7 because I was sad about the Lions.
And he's going?
Like some things, and he was popping on my board as like a prospect in that range. I was like, oh, I didn't even realize. So like they've got 2 guys
Bennett,
on the
instead
end.
of doing work, he does mock drafts for the Lions.
I got 2 guys on the edge who were like NFL caliber last year. James Carpenter's going to play at a P5. Kamara's playing at a P5. That's a lot to lose.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
You did not help me at all with that. You actually,
I just think it's football and college football in 2024. You kind of have to have like crazy roster turnover and reload. And I think the guys they brought in are capable of producing.
that's fair. I think the transfer class, it's been a really good class put together by Bob Chesney. Some big names, some maybe smaller names. And like you said, on the offensive side, I mean, we didn't expect Elijah Surratt to be like the most prolific wide receiver in program history for one season.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And so like very much Eric O'Neill, who you've been all over after his season at LIU, he very well could come in and just like set the world on fire. Lloyd Summerall the third could very well, with a 6'5", 240 frame. He's going to be bigger than a lot of Sunbelt offensive linemen. He could come in and
height-wise.
Yes. Sorry. You knew everyone knew what I meant. Everyone knew what I meant. But yes, there's potential there. And I think that's kind of a common thread throughout this entire JMU football roster is the word potential.
I think that's kind of what you're looking at. And I also think some of it though is kind of misleading because they lost so much production that when we look at it, we're like, well, they haven't done anything in a JMU uniform. But like O'Neill and Dobbs, some of these guys, like there's potential, but Dobbs had like 140 tackles this season.
Dobbs is a physical freak who should like be like a stud.
Yeah, so there's guys who have produced, numerous guys actually have produced just in different purple jerseys.
Dylan Morris,
all the Holy Cross kids.
Yeah, the whole Holy Cross team that we brought over.
Right, like Iowa Dye from North Texas, the running back, whatever, 1,000 yards last year. Different, but on paper, like a better running back than they've had since Percy.
Yeah. Nathan asked, how do you guys feel about the run defense in 2024 with the new additions? Personally, I think it's going to take a step back, but that's only because we had arguably the best rush defense in the entire nation a year ago, and just like regressing to the mean, it'll probably not be number 1 in EPA per play.
Yeah. Also the way they count stats in college where sacks.
That helps.
When you got a guy who leads the country in sacks, that makes your run defense look pretty darn nice. So I don't know if they'll have the same level of like consistent sack production.
But that being said, I don't think a team's going to run for like 250 on JMU next year.
Not unless they're Air Force.
Oh, damn. You had to bring that up. Yeah, I had to bring that up. I was having a good day, man. Just stop. It's going to be a long day when you can't stop the first option of a triple option.
That is tough.
Yeah. That brings us over to the hardwood. We'll dive back into football in a little bit with listener questions. But men's basketball, they destroyed ODU on Thursday. Terrence Edwards got 2 technicals, a bit of a chippy game, but the Dukes moved to 2-0 in Norfolk, Virginia. I'm burying the lead because we're going to talk at length, I think, about the App State game coming up. But was there anything from this ODU game that you took away that was a positive that you want to talk about?
I think JMU deserves more credit than JMU gets for beating bad teams this year.
That's a good take. They are 13-0 against Quad 4.
Yeah, and it's one where I think we forget very quickly. And Mark Byington, he inherited a dumpster fire of a program. Like he had a new arena that everyone's like, wow, a new arena. But like They were not playing well.
They were one of the worst teams in the country.
They were really bad. They were poorly coached. And they're no longer poorly coached. Like they beat the crap out of teams they're supposed to beat, which 4 years ago, I think most fans would have paid a lot of money to have happen. So like, I do think they deserve credit for when they play bad teams of looking like a superior team.
Yeah. And I believe they're 1-2 against quad one teams right now. Or might be 1-1 in quad one.
Yeah, it's probably like 1-1. And they're 4-3 against the first 3 quads, which isn't terrible.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're right. So, yeah, give them some credit for destruction of ODU. They've done it to South Alabama, who isn't actually appearing to be like as bad as that utter beatdown may have appeared. So, yes, you're right. However, they were well coached. They are a well coached team. They beat up on the teams they need to beat up, but holy hell, was that a terrible, maybe I'm being too rough and maybe I'm going back to our early podcasting days when I spoke in hyperbole, but what was that game plan? What was that coaching against App?
So they lose to App on the road. They've got 2 losses against App now. 82
not good. We all but lost the sorry, let me take the fan hat off. JMU lost the regular season title with that loss. Sorry, go ahead.
Probably true. 82-76. Generous. The score looks maybe a little more generous than the game played out. They're down by double digits or right around 10 for a lot of the second half. A tough loss. Well, I guess what's your takeaway here from 2 losses to App?
I talked about it on the post-game reaction presented by Christopher William Jewelers. So the game plan at the bank 2 weeks ago, was to drive into the lane, force interior shots, which I agreed with at the time, and then shot fake, get them up into the air, maybe try to draw fouls, but get them out of their shot blocking lanes, essentially. And by them, I mean the Mountaineers. JMU is one of, if not the best inside scoring team in the Sun Belt. So, all right, I agree with that game plan. They start the game with that exact game plan. They're attacking, they're shot faking, and they get out to an early, and I know this is going to sound like nothing, a 6-2 lead. Noah Friedel gets a wide open 3. He misses. They go down on the other end. Sorry, they're up 6-3, but they went on a little 6-0 run and looked like dominant, which in 45 seconds of game time. Maybe I was overhyping that part of the game. But then Noah Friedel misses a 3. They go down the other end. They splash a 3. And then from there, JMU never regained the lead. And it was all App State. And from there, it seemed like the game plan got rattled a little bit. They stopped shot faking. They started driving to the lane right at Justin Abson, who tied the program record with 8 blocks for App State. He could have probably had 10 blocks, depending on who was statting the game. But, like, they never adjusted. Even when they were down 12 with, 5 minutes left, and you haven't been able to generate consistent paint scoring, you still are driving. There were no adjustments. And yeah, JMU is going to be fine. JMU is going to beat up on bad Sunbelt teams, probably win, the rest of their Sunbelt games, maybe drop another 1 here or there, but they're going to run the table, probably be a 2 or 3 seed in the Sunbelt tournament and have a rematch with App State in the Sunbelt tournament. That's going to happen. But man, that game just made me so frustrated and embarrassed that there were no adjustments made, it seemed like they just hit copy paste for the game plan and said, this is our game plan. This is how we're playing. And it lost you the first game by 6 points? It lost you the second game by 6 points.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. It was a tough showing for the Duke Dogs. A lot of people are saying that. But here's my thing. Who do you think is the best team in the Sun Belt?
App State.
So why is everyone so mad? And I was mad too. Why is everyone so mad?
This is spoken like someone who just watched their team piss away a 17-point lead.
No, but that's different, right? Because they're paid. Why is everybody so mad that they lost to the best team in the conference on the road?
Because I think maybe this was my own mistake. I thought JMU was the best team in the Sun Belt going into that game. And they're not. And it was like a rude awakening that App is better. But
That's
the thing
probably
is,
true.
they had chances to win. And well, we don't know if they had chances actually because they stuck to the same game plan.
I think that part makes a lot of sense. So the only teams this year, and App leads the country in blocks per game, right? If I'm
Probably
not
because they had
mistaken.
100 against JMU on Saturday.
So they're blocking like 7 shots a game. They're awesome at blocking shots. It's like their thing. They play great defense. They swat shots. It's pretty impressive. Only 2 teams this year have gotten 10 or more shots blocked by App State. The 2 teams are JMU, which had 12 blocked, and Central Penn, which had 16 blocked shots and lost 111 to 35. So I think that's, at least for me, where some of the frustration stems from is there's this, I saw some people being like, this is just what App State does. Right. But not to that extent against everyone else who plays D1 basketball. Or if you're Central Penn, right, where that's not a fair fight. And you just get all your shots blocked. You got 16 shots blocked and 35 points. I imagine based on that math, you had more blocked shots than made shots, which is sad. JMU didn't fall into that camp, which is a positive, but like they're a Division I basketball team. They're a top 100 KenPom team. So that's frustrating because App State does block shots. They don't usually block 12 in a game.
And that's the thing. And it just seemed like they had just seen this team 2 weeks prior and they blocked 8, 4 of which were by Justin Abson. And then in this game, they seemingly rolled out the same game plan. Abson had 6 blocks in the first half. And in the second half, they didn't really change all that much. The only thing that changed was Abson getting less minutes because he kind of got into like half-hearted foul trouble. You had 12 shots blocked. You lose by 6. I don't know if you're following my math here, but if 4 of those shots aren't blocked and they end up in the bottom of the cylinder, you win.
I mean, that's true.
And you still had 8 shots blocked.
Yeah, a lot of stuff was getting blocked, which was tough. I thought the atmosphere was great.
Oh, fantastic.
Tough road game for sure.
Tough.
How much of this though? Because I feel like we put some blame on Byington for the
I put
game
all the blame
plan,
on Byington.
right? He was talking about how the shot selection was bad, so maybe it wasn't actually his game plan because maybe they didn't quite follow.
But isn't that on coaching? Sorry, go ahead.
I would know that's on. I think that's fair to say that's on coaching, right? To get your game plan across to the players. I guess my thing is like they're 18-3. Like I know. The more I think about it, like I know, like I was frustrated during that game, mostly because it's not every day that your basketball team like not only struggles to make shots, but then also has a lot of their shots just blocked away from the basket
In like a demoralizing fashion.
against a huge rival on the road, right? Like a lot of reasons for that to be frustrating because as fans are getting chirped on social media and you can't really say anything because your team's every
Until
time
they
go to
rush the
rim.
court and you're like,
Yeah, and then you're like, oh yeah, nice court rush, you losers. Like, which is a tough one to win. Like, oh yeah, you beat us and you get to celebrate. That's cool.
idiots.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's like they're 18-3. If they start the year 0-2, which they probably should have with their 2 overtime wins on the road, then it's not even a concern. We're just talking about how they're a good Sun Belt basketball team that's lost some close games. But instead, they beat Michigan State. They got the cool road win against Kent State. They're 18-3. They've got 1 home loss, and it was by 4 points to a really good App team. I find myself like looking back a lot on the Rowe era and being like, you know what? This is fine.
Yeah, and 2 things to build upon that to kind of rationalize it for myself. I would love to see JMU's wins over expected. Like they've got to be 4 or 5 wins above expected, just the way this season has gone. With that being said, this might be a hot take. I think we're in the middle of the greatest coach of JMU history. And he's built the program up, I think, faster than we all expected. And now we have these at-large aspirations.
They've had some good coaches back in the day.
Yeah, I know, but none of them have done what Byington has done, I think. None of them inherited one of the worst teams in the country and built them into a conference contender.
He's done a really nice job.
Again, I might be prisoner of the moment. I've been called a disgrace to the university before for being prisoner of the moment. This might be another one of those, but I think we're in the midst of the greatest coaching era of JMU men's basketball.
I'll push back a little. I think he needs to win a conference title for me to say he's the greatest coach in program history.
Fair.
And then I also would like to see him lose to a future GOAT candidate in the NCAA tournament. You know how everybody brings up the North Carolina loss, and they're like, "What a game for the Dukes." It's like, well, they didn't lose though, right?
All right, Bronny James, we need the JMU USC first round matchup in the NCAA tournament.
They're not getting anywhere. We're better than them. We're better than the team with Bronny James on it.
Schedule that right now so we can play it, and then by the transitive property, beat LeBron James. Daniel Merriman said Lefty would like a word. I knew that's that's what people were going to say.
Luke Campanelli did some nice stuff too.
Yeah, I know they both did. I stand by what I said.
Okay.
All right.
But you think the greatest coach in JMU men's basketball history just got absolutely cooked.
All right.
By Dusty Kerr.
All right. God. Honestly, yeah, because that's where the state of JMU men's basketball is.
We do got to give a little credit. I feel like JMU fans are bad at this. App State has a win over Auburn this year. They now have 2 over JMU. We're talking about like Sunbelt at-larges. Neither team's going to get an at-large, but like they got a nice resume. App State's a nice team.
App State's really good, and they're very well coached.
Yeah.
Dusty Kearns is a damn good coach, and he's probably going to get poached away here soon, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
He's good. They're good.
They're good. But moving forward for JMU men's basketball, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll all but win out.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine too. I mean, they only play one team inside the Ken Pom top 150. It's Akron, which is 97th at home. It's a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way. You'd think they'd win a lot of games.
I would hope so. Josh Dunn, when will correspondent and Brian Reese be involved next? We're currently planning.
We got to get Brian. We got to get Brian on the pod to talk basketball.
Yeah, that would be fun. Do you think they win the Sun Belt title if they have to play App again?
No. What do you think?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could hang with them. It's just
they've hung with them twice.
Yeah, it's hard when you like get a lot of your shots blocked. And going into the game, I was like, they're not going to do that again. And they were like, oh, really? Hold my beer. And they just got like 50% more shots blocked. It was kind of infuriating to watch.
It was so infuriating because it was just like, okay, last time I drove into Abson and he blocked it. Yeah. What if I do it again? I said on the post-game reaction, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. That was that game. I felt insane watching it.
It was tough. It was tough. I don't know. I feel like they got some stuff they need to work through on the offensive end.
Very much. I think offensively, the Sun Belt defenses, we talked about it either last week or 2 weeks ago, and we'll probably dive into it next week again. But offensively in the Byington era, or I guess since they joined the Sun Belt last year, they've struggled against conference defenses.
Their 3-point offense in conference games, 12th out of 14 teams. They're shooting 30.2% from 3. Georgia Southern is shooting the best at 39.2%. Bet you wouldn't have guessed that one when conference play started.
But that right there is the issue. In non-conference, they were hitting their threes at a near 40% clip, and now that has fallen 10% in conference games. You can't have that and win against App on the road.
Yeah, you got to knock some threes down. They're not shooting free throws well either. So that's kind of a tough combination.
Well, it also seemed like against App, they were content with just abandoning the three at times.
It's all a little bit confusing. And then in fairness to them, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing,
I'll tell you.
I don't know how much you like can improve or really learn when you like to go from playing ODU with like its coach is gone due to some health circumstances. They just dismissed their leading scorer for conduct unbecoming of a monarch, which is just a hilarious way to dismiss someone from a team. They're a dumpster fire. So you go from like a dumpster fire that you kind of have your way with to one of the more competent like mid to low majors in the country with an elite shot blocker. It's kind of hard to prep. Like you're playing well and you're like, we're feeling good. We're attacking the rim. We're getting by guys and doing everything. You do the same thing against App and it just gets like swatted into the first row. And you're like, wait.
Yeah. Someone brought this up when I was talking about it post game, where they're like, the non-conference needs to get better because it didn't prepare us for this. And I kind of pushed back. I was like, well, they played Michigan State and Kent State, and they had this, what was it, Southern Illinois, a fringe top 100 KenPom team. You expected Kent State to be. I was like, all of this stuff, and then they kind of pushed back to me, and I was like, oh, that's actually a fantastic point. Those were all at the beginning. They haven't played a good team since like December going into conference play. Then the first good team they played was a Southern Miss team with Andre Curbelo, who now is gone again. So that loss is just going to get worse by the day. But like they just weren't tested. And now on a night in, night out basis in the Sun Belt, you're not getting tested. And so when you do stand up against Justin Abson and App State, you're like, oh, we haven't been prepared for this, like with trials by fire.
They're in a tough spot.
Yeah, they are. And with that loss, it dashed their at-large hopes. That brings us to this week's 3-Notch Weekly Preview presented by 3-Notch. This week, they start the week off with a matchup with Coastal Carolina. The Chanticleers come in kind of not that great. Just like ODU, their coach is gone. Cliff Ellis retired 8 games into the season, forcing Benny Moss into the interim role. They got Jacob Meyer and Ganika Ochiako. Keep an eye on those two. Meyer's a 6'2 guard, where Ochiako is a 6'10 senior. That is the lone offensive bright spot for the Chanticleers. For Coastal, they crash the offensive boards at a pretty good clip, but that might be because they just miss a lot of shots. But that is kind of a weak spot in JMU's defense, is allowing offensive boards. So maybe they'll have a chance to get second chance points. Do you expect Coastal to come into the AUBC and give the Dukes a game?
So I think if my counting was correct, these two teams, you got Coastal and then you got ODU on the weekend. They're combined for 11 wins on the season. JMU has 13 wins this year by double digits. So I think there's a pretty significant gap between these teams. Coastal's not very good. It's just a weird week, right? You're playing two teams that like don't even have the head coach they started the year with. Tough for both those teams. Both of them are at home. I imagine the spreads for these are going to be pretty close to like 20 points. I would be kind of surprised if either game was competitive. I think the following week when they play at Arkansas State and home against Akron has a chance to be fun. I think this is kind of a snoozer of a weekend, not to damper the preview.
No, it's all right. I mean, you're coming off the App State, though. You kind of want to make some two statements here. Like you said, the next game on Saturday is the ODU Monarchs. Again, third time these two teams have played, and they are finally done playing each other unless they have a date set in the Sun
That'd be
Belt
sweet
tournament for 4 games. But like you said, Jeff Jones, he had a heart attack. He's being treated for prostate cancer. We talked about it last week. Kieran Donahue's the interim. JMU's just dominated this matchup, winning by 15 points in the first one, 16 on Wednesday. It's odd because you don't often see a team get substantially worse in about a 10-day time frame. But that's exactly what happened to ODU. Like you said, they let Vashawn Alette go for conduct unbecoming of a Monarch. So their leading scorer is gone. They have to figure all of that out. And I think the JMU game will be the second game they have without Alette.
Yeah, that's you want to act like a Monarch when you can, and when you don't, there are obviously consequences. They've just had a tough year. So is Coastal. JMU, perfect bounce back spot. You're playing two bad teams at home. You'd like to see them kind of get some stuff going, and by stuff, maybe like Michael Green knocking down some more threes. He was
2 for 2. He was 2 for 2.
2 for 2 from 3, and then struggled from inside the arc. He had a few go in and out too. That he's got to be so frustrated because he's fractionally off at this point. If they can get him going, and some other guys maybe figure out their 3-point shot. You can build confidence, I think, in these games. I talked about how you can't maybe improve a whole lot else when you're playing bad teams. I do think you can get your confidence back, which is maybe a big plus here in February.
Great point. That brings us over to women's basketball, a 1-1 weekend for the Dukes on the hardwood. They took down App State on Saturday in front of a record crowd, over 4,000 in attendance for the JMU App State game. But the week started with a tough Thursday loss against Marshall.
Kim Caldwell, take a bow. Marshall's head coach is a superstar. And she has them jacking up threes like you wouldn't believe. They run full court press. That was an absolute treat to watch that game. Disappointing from the JMU standpoint, but my gosh, that was a fun one. They shot 43 threes. They were just taking open threes and firing them. And I was like, this is electric. They weren't turning it over. They were forcing turnovers, maximizing possessions, get as many threes up as you can. Wow.
And now they got a road game with Marshall on Saturday.
Yeah, that's going to be brutal. Marshall looks like the best team in the conference, which is interesting because they kind of struggled to start the year non-conference, and then sort of figured it out with Coach Caldwell. I believe, yeah, this is her first year. So they went through it non-conference play, figured some stuff out, and are rolling now with this unique system that they're running, which is, I'm assuming, analytics-based, unless Kim Caldwell just loves the vibe of jacking three-pointers. But she was a big-time coach at, I think it was Glenville State, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Division II, 191 and 24 during her time there.
Holy crap.
Yeah, she's sweet, man. So I was impressed by that. I think the women's team on JMU's side, they're doing some good things. Peyton McDaniel, you found a cool stat on the interwebs that she's been one of the most efficient offensive players since the start of the new year, right up there with Paige Beckers.
1.25 points per possession. That's a lot of points per possession, folks.
She's scoring. They got Heaven Bristow working her way in nicely. Kozlova down low is always a threat. The Marshall one was tough because they turned it over against the press 23 times.
Yeah.
That was bad. But they're shooting.
That was also the undoing in the NCAA tournament game against Ohio State. So figure out the press, maybe?
Got to figure out the press. Got to take better care of the ball. But they're doing some positive things. The issue is they've got some really tough road games, including Marshall down the stretch that could be a challenge. But I think they'll be probably top 4 seed heading into the tournament with a chance.
Yeah, I think they can definitely contend for the championship.
They also got 4,000 people in there for, was that the App
State.
State game?
Yeah.
I think that's a women's record.
I already said this, yeah.
At the AUBC, yeah. Well,
Thanks for reciting it, man.
I was just say Coach O made some comments afterward about wanting people to consistently show up for those games, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I think a fair point there. They're a good watch, and they're not drastically different in terms of like chance of winning the Sun Belt than the men. And I feel like they've gotten. I think the men might have more of like an NCAA tournament potential, but the women, they deserve some love. Great season.
Great season. They're really figuring some things out. And Kozlova, Bristow, Hazel, we talk about it every time, but they've really found like their nucleus that I think can take them to a solid place. And I believe they return all of them. Maybe not Kozlova.
They definitely returned some key pieces. I think McDaniel and Hazel among them.
So big things coming. That brings us to News or Snooze, presented by Christopher William Jewelers. Bennett will give 3 quotes. I'll say if they're newsworthy or snoozeworthy. Take us away.
All right, this is from Heaven Bristow. This one was, I forget who tweeted it, so my apologies. This was
Connor, I believe his name is, the new WHSV guy.
Yes, okay. This is from Heaven Bristow. She says, I am a human. So the press conference ended, and then she asked them to turn the cameras back on to say something else. She says, I'm a human being. I see everything you guys say on social media. That's all. Thank you.
Newsworthy, and I'm very interested to know who she's talking about.
Yeah, me too.
I don't want to speculate too much on it, so I'll just say newsworthy. Treat athletes fairly.
Okay, this one from Coach O, which I've alluded to. This is after the App State game when they had 4,000 fans. I've never been one to beg and whine. It's just if you come watch that game, I would think you'd want to come back.
Newsworthy, like you said, I think the women's basketball team is a fun watch. It's a great time. I want to try and find a time to get up to Harrisonburg to catch a game. The Troy game last season was amazing. And sometimes those have better energy than the men's games.
Here's a question for you. Do you think they're getting a tough end of the stick here with some of the Sunbelt TV scheduling windows? Or I guess not even TV, just scheduling.
I'm going to, kind of build upon that. I know we hate the CAA for good reason, but I think the way that they had scheduling for basketball was superior, where it was a Thursday, Friday. So men's, women's, or women's, men's. I forget how it went, but they rotated the days. So men, women. So men's would play Thursday, Saturday. Women would play Friday, Sunday. Because there are times when, you only got one TV or maybe a TV and a laptop or whatever, but one of them's getting like major treatment and the other one's not. And then sometimes they're playing at the same exact time. And so I don't fully blame people for choosing one thing over the other. Like, I think the scheduling needs a little bit of a fix for the Sun Belt.
Yeah, that was a good point when you brought that up when we were talking offline a few days ago. Is at the CAA you could watch the women at home on a Sunday and the men the day before at home on a Saturday. The double headers are kind of tough. I don't know how many people are really staying for both games, especially if it's at 2:00 and then a 6:00.
That's a lot of basketball.
Yeah, that's a lot. Maybe you come back. I don't know, but it's a ton to do. They've had some other ones like what the women played home Thursday against Marshall, but the men were on the road against ODU. You probably got some people who go to Norfolk for the game, or they want to watch the men, so then they don't go to the women's game and they watch both, which is I watched both, but was kind of flipping between, like you said. Tough spot if you got both teams playing at the same time on the same day.
Also, I'm sure if there's any SIDs listening to this, they'll correct me if I'm wrong in saying this, but that seems like it spreads the department thin.
Probably. It's kind of got to be a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah. So.
All right. Last quote here. I didn't do any Lions quotes this week for obvious reasons. This is from Mark Byington after the App State.
Wait. You didn't want to have the Dan Campbell quote of him saying, "We may never get back here again"?
Could be true. All right. Mark Byington. We competed. We played hard. We played the right way as far as our mentality and our attacking, but we've got to play a little smarter in some areas.
I feel like every time they lose, he says the same thing. It's newsworthy, but like, play smarter then.
Here's a question for you. Have they been taking bad shots all year and we were blinded because they didn't lose? Or are they playing such bad teams that it's easier to get good shots? Like, why does the shot selection in conference play just seem like it? Or it's because maybe they're just missing them? I don't know.
Well, I think the shot selection looked bad against App State because 12 of them ended up in the first row.
So are they you think they're taking worse shots?
No, I'm trying to think of a way to word this. I don't think they're playing as well as they can. And I think in terms of shots, so yes, kind of to answer your question a long-winded way, I think playing worse teams, you get better shots. So like when you make that extra pass and you're swinging around the perimeter, Julian Wooden gets wide open to just splash it home. Friedel gets wide open to splash it home. Against an App State team, they're recovering, they're closing out, and they're making that a little bit more difficult. When you're running off of the off-ball screen, you're taking maybe one more elbow to the chest, one more elbow to the side, something like that, where you're tired when you get to your spots so that you don't have as much energy that you're expecting. All of these factors around a basketball game, right? So I think JMU is really, really, really good against bad teams. And I think they're fine against good teams. And I think that is because when you're playing a good team, the shot creation is more difficult. The defense is better. So I don't think it's that they're just taking bad shots all the time. I think it's against good teams. They struggle because it's hard to play good college basketball teams.
I think that's fair.
But man, those were some dumb shots against App State.
Some questionable looks.
I just wanted some drives and kickouts, man. Is that too much to ask?
No, I mean, just bring in Kim Caldwell for a week. Let her work her magic.
They also started their little run with the full court press. Can I say a hot take?
Yeah.
Well, I just wish teams ran full court press more often.
It's so fun.
Like if I was a coach, I would run full court press all game.
It's so fun.
I think I've said that on this podcast.
You're
before.
lying, yeah.
Like, I don't see why. Remember when I tried to get Chaos lives here, like how Havoc lives here with VCU?
We started Shaka Smart rumors, I think.
No, I wanted our defense to be called Chaos.
You didn't even want Shaka. You just wanted to rip off Havoc.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I wanted our defense to be called Chaos. Because when
you were worried about
it,
the branding of the defense.
when you watch the defense, sometimes it feels like absolute utter chaos.
All right.
And somehow it turns out with a turnover.
Could we just start saying that?
I have. No one picked up on it, so I stopped.
I'll try to bring it back. I'll start being like, wow, JMU's defense is chaotic.
No,
creating chaos.
I'm chaotic might be it. I like the hard C there.
Yeah.
Okay. On that note, JMU lacrosse. It's nearly lacrosse season. It's nearly spring sports season. It's nearly crossover 2.0 season. Lacrosse preseason ranked 6th after finishing last year in the NCAA quarters and finishing with a ranking of 6th a year ago. So no movement between the last ranking of a year ago and the preseason ranking.
They're pretty good. I would expect them to be really good. Shelly Clays, she can coach. They got Isabel Peterson.
She's good.
What else are you looking for? You know what I mean? Like, they're loaded. They don't really use the portal because they're recruiting so well out of high school and developing. And is a national title in the cards?
I think they're going to have a chance to make a better run than last year. And last year they finished in the NCAA quarters and were competitive against Syracuse. And you got Peterson, who's last year averaged over a hat trick per game.
She's good. Which
is just an insane number. I think she scored less than 2 goals twice last year. I think it was against UConn and UVA. She's a baller. And as long as you got her, JMU should be able to run with anyone. And they opened the season with a otherworldly at-home slate, I believe, against Tech and UNC.
Yep. Can't complain about that. They've got a phenomenal schedule. The AAC, what a conference for the Dukes to be in.
Yep. And if you win those 2 games to open up the season, you're catapulting up the ranks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So lacrosse should be a special season, a fun season. That brings us into the Diamond Dukes. I got some stats, man.
All right, hit me.
All right, it's 18 days until opening day against number 3, Arkansas at Arkansas. You got Fenwick Trimble, who led the team in home runs a year ago. He's a guy to watch. He's the highest rated draft prospect on this JMU team. They got a few draft prospects per perfect game. Fenwick Trimble, pitcher T.R. Williams, pitcher Joe Vagazzi, I'm mispronouncing his name, pitcher Jaden Kinsler, fielder Mike Mancini, and pitcher Luke McGrath. Joe Vagatsky is what I'm going to say. I need to pull up a pronunciation guide. But Joe Vagatsky, the pitcher, he was actually drafted in the 14th round of last year's MLB draft, decided to come back. So a good arm, an MLB, maybe not an MLB exactly arm. That's why he's coming back to develop a little bit more in the college ranks. But a guy that was good enough to be drafted a year ago, they're all coming back. So there should be a lot of talent on this Duke squad again.
That's the idea. They should be talented, but I don't know. It's the will they, won't they, right? With Marlon Eichenberry, where they haven't made an NCAA regional, but they also haven't been dog water. So they're right in that middle ground. There are big questions this year, right? Because you've still got to hire a new athletic director in the spring. What are they going to do at the end of this baseball season? The major question: the Sun Belt's a baseball league. The Valley is a baseball community. We talk about this every podcast, not every podcast, but every year. So I don't know. Are they going to be good this year? You tell me.
So you got T.R. Williams, Vagatsky, Kinsler, and McGrath. You got 4 pitchers who, according to Perfect Game, are pro prospects, right? Coming into this year, there'll be scouts at some games watching these guys pitch. So you got to expect that Eikenberry will have something up his sleeve, will have a good pitching staff, or that's what you would kind of hope. So he took over in 2016, and in that time, he's had 18 players make it to the professional leagues, whether independent, minors, or make it eventually to the MLB. He's had 18 players do that. 10 of those 18 have been pitchers. Over that time frame, though, starting in 2016, his staffs have finished in ERA in the conference 9th, 7th, 1st. Awesome in 2019. However, that first place team did have 4 players that went on to become professionals, 2 of which were MLB players in Kevin Kelly and Nick Robertson. They didn't win a CAA tournament game. They lost their first CAA tournament game, I believe 2-1, and then lost like 9-7 or something like that in the CAA losers bracket. All right, then 2020 COVID hit. 21, 8th, 5th, and then last year they finished 8th in the conference in their first year in the Sun Belt. This is another stacked pitching staff, similar to 2019. I mean, what's going to happen? This was a team that a year ago they were 1-9 against quad 1 teams, 3-9 against quad 2 teams, but they were 15-3 against Q3 and 12-4 against quad 4. So, yeah, kind of like what you said. It's a little bit of a yikes.
Big year.
Like
big year. I think this one's actually the year when something has to happen. And by something, I mean like you make an NCAA regional.
You have 4 guys on your roster who, according to, and I know I'm putting a lot of faith in what Perfect Game is saying, but 4 pro prospects, maybe draft. One of them was drafted a year ago, but you got 4 guys on your roster like that, right? You also are returning 73% of your innings pitched from a year ago and 72% of all of your strikeouts from a year ago. And on the offensive side, you're returning 61% of your at-bats, 64% of your runs, and 59% of your hits, and you're returning one of your most potent bats in the lineup in Fenwick Trimble. You should be competitive. You finished 7th in the Sun Belt last year with a 15-13 record in Sun Belt play. You need to get over that hump. And I think this team has the capability of doing that. And I think if they don't, I'll still be on this podcast yelling next year.
That's fair. Of note, new pitching coach this year. I believe they lost Jimmy Jackson to Maryland, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Travis Farrick, new pitching coach, comes to JMU from Dayton, where did some nice stuff. 2023, Dayton set the program record for strikeouts in a season with 552, top 50 nationally in strikeouts per 9. Recruited really well. They actually had a top 100 national recruiting class. So an interesting addition there. But they kind of got to put up or shut up. It's time to make some noise. And they were fairly competitive in the Sun Belt last year until the tournament.
They got talent. 18 people have gone on to play professionally under Marlon Eikenberry since 2016. That's a good clip.
Good number of guys.
Good number of guys. You got to put together. I'm not even going to be as needy as Bennett. I'm not even going to say you need to make an NCAA regional. I would love for you to win 2-3 games in the Sun Belt Conference tournament. Is that too much to ask for? I think Eikenberry has won 1 postseason game since coming to JMU.
It's been a struggle for him, and I got to figure out, let's see if I can pull this up real quick, if they still list it the way that they used to. No, I think I went back and did it on my own, I guess. His record in conference tournaments is poor.
Yeah.
I'll find the real number next time, but it's one where he's like, it's like a 2-15 kind of like something like tough.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, they got a win last year in the losers bracket, I think.
Well, there you go.
Something like that. All right. But a team that I think has potential to make some noise in the Sun Belt this year is softball.
Are they back?
Am I crazy for thinking that?
It's time for them to be back.
So after a Women's College World Series run, that roster gets decimated by graduation. You lose like all of your key players. Sarah Jubis gone, Odyssey Alexander gone, Kate Gordon gone.
Yeah.
Half of that lineup was gone. And Now we're 11 days out from opening day. They're taking on Ball State to start their season in the River City Leadoff, hosted by Jacksonville University. They return a lot of big-time talent from a year ago. They're like baseball, where they're a pretty experienced team. 87% of their hit production from a year ago, 82% of their RBIs, and they return their ace, Alyssa Humphrey.
Yeah, they've got a nice group of players.
Everything okay in your apartment?
Yeah, they got a nice group of players that return. Kirsten Fleet is an exciting one, the true freshman pitcher who has a chance to be a superstar. They also added Molly Grubb from Virginia, transfer pitcher, and Peyton List, Virginia Tech transfer. Best pitching staff they've had in years.
Yeah, which is going to be really important because I think their offense should be good, powered by KK Mathis.
We'll see. I think they're going to need some help outside of KK, but the potential is there for a good year.
Yeah, they also lost Hannah Shiflett. She led the team in home runs, had a 1.245 OPS. So you're going to see, I'm thinking Kylie Gleason as a potential player to step up. She had the second best batting average a year ago. She'll be a senior, plays out in the outfield, a transfer from South Carolina. Going to have a good season out of her to kind of replace that Hannah Shiflett production. I think they can. And with a really great pitching staff, you might not necessarily need an elite level offense.
Some rumors that Peyton List could do a little bit of both too. Virginia Tech transfer, highly touted recruit, underclassman, might have some Megan Good vibes. We'll see.
Exciting. That's where JMU's always succeeded, when they have that DP as their pitcher.
That's right.
Designated player instead of designated hitter in softball. All right. That brings us to listener questions to finish this episode out. Ready for some listener questions?
Go for it.
All right. I'm pulling them up. I thought you'd be tapping away, pulling them up, but
I'll pull them up too.
I'm wrong. My sincere apologies.
Okay,
this
here
is
we go.
Terrible podcasting. Okay.
Prediction, this is from Daniel Merriman. Prediction for the Sun Belt champion men's basketball seeding in March Madness. Like, which seed will they get?
I think JMU or App. Is 12 seed too high?
I could see 12.
I think 12 seed, no matter who wins.
I like that. All right, Ryan Rutherford, good friend of the program. How long did you cry when App State chanted "Who's your daddy" during Edwards' free throws at the end of the game? It was probably about 3 minutes for him.
I was watching it with Eva, and she kind of was like, "Why are they chanting that?" I was confused why that chant was
3-0 in men's basketball and football.
Yeah, I guess so. Also, did you hear the FJMU chants? Like, very clear as day on the broadcast.
That's sickening.
There was some guy in the stand you could see just double bird at the JMU bench, just chanting JMU.
Hate to see that.
I cried.
This is from 83 Duke. Has there been any confirmation that Dylan Morris is enrolled this semester? Seeing a lot of concerns that Dylan Morris is not Duke.
We have not confirmed nor denied whether he's in classes at James Madison University. That's a job for Daniel Merriman. He tells us he's camping out outside of every single residence hall and every single apartment complex around the Harrisonburg area and the Stanton area, just to be safe. He has not spotted him yet. However, his bio on Instagram does say quarterback at JMU football. So I would say we can stop worrying. He'll be in the purple and gold next year. All right. Bennett did leave us here for a minute. So I'll run through some of these listener questions by myself. Connor Ray, did JMU throw the game to make the win over App State in the tournament final that much more compelling? Yes. Yes, they did. That's exactly what they did. JMU decided that going down 2-0 was actually the nice thing to do to App State. It had actually it helps App State's net ranking, their RPI, all of that, so that they have a better chance at getting that at-large seed, because JMU knows they're going to win the Sun Belt tournament. They'll be in good spot later on so that they can actually help App State in the long run to get that at-large seed. So it makes it much more compelling, much more exciting. Us fans, we can finally take it to them after going 0-2 against the Mountaineers. and 0-1 in football, 0-3 in this sports calendar year against App State. Daniel Merriman, will JMU average over 5.5 yards per carry next year? In 2023, they averaged 3.9. There's going to be a little bit of a cop-out answer. I think more than 3.9, but less than 5.5. So you bring back Tyshawn Wyatt on the offensive line. You have Jesse Ramil. You got a couple guys coming back, and you got a couple of transfers coming in. Patrick McCurtry is one of them. That's big. And you're also bringing in the talent of George Pettaway. You're bringing in the talent of Ayo Adei. Both of those guys have game-breaking ability. George Pettaway, we didn't really see it at UNC, but hugely recruited coming out of high school. Both of those guys, huge talent. And then you got some of the guys that, might come up that were already on the roster. But I don't think they're going to break 5.5 yards per carry. That seems like a really high number that you're going to need some explosive plays. Maybe they get those. Maybe they do. But I'm betting over 3.9, but under 5.5. But I think it's going to be a much, much, much more dynamic running back room for JMU this upcoming year. Daniel Merriman, who will get double-digit sacks next season for JMU, if anyone? I'm going to go with, we talked about him at the top. Lloyd Sommerfeld, I think. This is when I need Bennett to lean on his insane name memory. The 6'5", 240 edge rusher, that is prototypical size. That size you don't see in the Sun Belt. If he can figure it out, maybe him, maybe as well Eric O'Neill, the Long Island transfer. Two big names to keep an eye on. I like both of them. Maybe Amar Thomas, maybe Tyreek Tucker. But I think kind of like one of those prototypical edge guys can come in and make a lot of noise next year. JMU fan, at JMU fan, do you think the football team is set at wide receiver, or do you think they try to add one or two more? You're talking to the guy that just wrote an article over on JMU Sports News. I think this wide receiver room is set. I think this wide receiver room is poised for really big things. They've brought in a few, but I think with Tajee Hudson, with Omarion Dolison, with Cam Ross, with Nakai Poole, all of these guys, I think they have a real potential to make some noise next year. And with the offensive system that Dean Kennedy is going to run, with what Bob Chesney is going to bring in and what Dylan Morris brings in from Washington, I think I don't think we should be worried about wide receiver. I think they'll be really, really set with the talent they already have on this roster. And Daniel Merriman, biggest positions of concern for football heading into the 2024 season. We kind of answered that a little bit earlier. Mine, I think Bennett is a little bit too, but he thinks in theory they should get better, is the defensive backs. Keep an eye on that. Should be fine, should be good, but I'm still worried. Nathan also asked at the top of the show, and I'm just now getting to this. I'm so sorry, Nathan. How do you guys think these corners will do against these UNC receivers? Because you got some good players in Nakai, Meredith, Travell, Mullins, Chauncey Logan. Chauncey Logan, out of those three, right now, the only one slated to be a day one starter. Nakai Meredith, maybe he breaks into the rotation. Maybe he's the slot guy. Travell Mullen, same thing. Antoine Booth, same thing. Nakai Meredith, an NC State transfer. Travell Mullen, an Indiana transfer. And Antoine Booth, a Michigan State transfer. However, those three guys have never really been able to crack the two deep at all. We've never seen their name on a two deep since they've come to JMU. So I think that the corners will do great against the UNC receivers. Chauncey Logan and D'Angelo Pons will be really interesting to see if Terrence Spence is that slot guy, if it's Nakai Meredith, if it's Travell Mullen, if it's Antoine Booth, if it's one of the safeties that are able to help. The safeties is my big point of concern, but corner-wise, they should be able to stack up against UNC early on in the season. So thank you so much for tuning in to the JMU Sports News Podcast. My name's Jack Fitzpatrick. Bennett Conlon had to dip a little early, so he says thank you as well for tuning in. This has been the JMU Sports News Podcast presented by Bet Online. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.